any opportunity to get started if that's what you want to do. And I didn't know many people in the film industry, but I knew an Australian martial arts actor called Richard Norton, who you may be familiar with from some of his Hong Kong films. Now he's a big-time choreographer. But he'd done a movie in Australia called Under the Gun with my stepfather, Tino Severano, who is his karate instructor. My family's Australian, and my father, not my biological father, but my father is Tino. So I saw this movie ahead of time and thought, well, this is so cool. And it was Richard and a kickboxing lady called Kathy Long partnered up. And I looked at the movie and thought, this would be very interesting to do a movie with these guys. And Richard said to me, if you have a script, we could do something else. And I had seen a film by the prolific populist director Wong Jing called The Last Blood. And I thought the film, it was a typical Wong Jing kind of hokey B-movie, Roger Corman kind of thing, with some great moments. But the premise of it was the same premise that we had of the religious figure being injured, critically ill, and you've got to find the blood donor, and the bad guys are killing off the donors one by one. And I just thought, this is such a great idea. So I went to Wong Jing, which is more than he's ever done when he's borrowed stories for his films. But I went to Wong Jing and I said, I'd like to do an English remake. I don't have any money at the moment. Can I pay you a token sum? I don't know if you know about this. Sometimes when you do a deal with somebody, you pay them $1 and then you have an agreement, and you have a contract.
Yep,
we tried to do that. And for some reason, I don't know, he just kind of like had got, he in the end said, go and do whatever you want to do and you don't have to pay me any money. I think he didn't understand the idea that we would have a contract with him, find the money, and then pay him something later. And so in a way it was kind, but at the same time I felt, I should have maybe explained it better, because I always felt it was karmically not good. But he absolutely refused to be paid, and I think we credited him on the film, but it was something he didn't want to be involved with, and I think he didn't really understand the process. So anyway, I wrote a script based on The Last Blood, but I set it in Australia. So the religious figure goes to Australia, and he's got the lady bodyguard, who in that version was to be played by Kathy Long. And then he's wounded, and they need to get the blood. And the guy they find is this Aussie guy, former Australian intelligence, if that's not a contradiction in terms. But he's an Australian intelligence guy living in the middle of the outback, and they have to get across the country to get the blood to the. It's all about his adventures. But the premise was the same. And then Under the Gun perhaps didn't do as well as they would have hoped, and there was not any sense that they could pay for a follow-up film. So, like everybody, I basically put it on I'd written the whole script, and I put it on my pile of unmade movies, always with the thought that one day I'd come back to it. So that was where it rested. And then I had left. I'd done various films for various companies, and in Hong Kong, working as a producer. One of them was called Dragon Squad, which was I brought in an actor called Michael Biehn, who'd been in Terminator, Aliens. You know who Michael Biehn is, right?
I fancy myself as a cinephile, so that I have crossed Michael Bihn's path. Hicks, that's forever. He will be Hicks. Somebody wake up Hicks.
Well, he was the guy. He was in 4 of the greatest movies ever made. He was in Terminator. He was in Aliens. He's in The Abyss. He's in The Rock. He's in Tombstone. So he's had a great career. He's a fantastic actor, no question. So we got him to be in Dragon Squad. And then at that time, I said, listen, if I have another movie coming up, I think I already had the idea of going back to the well and doing the movie that became titled Blood Bond. I can't for the life of me remember. Maybe it was already called that, but it was the same story. But I'm thinking of adapting it and doing it in Thailand, or doing it in Hong Kong, or wherever he would do. And I'll have you to play the guy. And that was, I'm sure he hears that a lot from people when he meets them in passing, because he's got a fan base, and he's also a very charming guy, and I'm sure people would like to work with him multiple times. And then I was working, shortly after Dragon Squad, I signed on with a big American studio for 3 years as their vice president for Asia. And then after 3 years left and was independent again. And whenever you leave a big studio, the prevailing sense is that's it for you. Your time's over. You'll never be heard from again. And to some degree, that can happen. So I was like, everybody will say that I could only make movies at that studio if I can't make another movie. So some of the worst decisions, Sean, I've made in my life have been based on, you'd better do this, because if you don't, everybody will say this. Who cares? Who cares what everybody says? It's like, you got to live your life for you. But I used to worry about these things. So I rushed to put a new film into production, and that was The Blood Bond. So I took the script down. I had forged a partnership with a gentleman named Henry Look at a studio in China in Nanhai called Ace Studios. And they'd never really made a proper movie before. And I said, I'm going to find the money. I'm going to do the script. It's going to star Michael Biehn. We'll find a new girl to be the Deva, the fighting girl, the bodyguard. And we're going to shoot it there. And it's going to be this kind of B movie, but it'll work for the global market. So that was the genesis of the project.
Yeah.
Shall I continue?
Oh, I mean, yeah. I'm all. Well, I did want to comment that I have the Blood Bond playing right now. Just while I have it fresh in my mind, these action sequences are still better than 95% of what I see in American action films today. Like Phoenix Chow, she still moves better than most people that I see now.
That woman is a mystery. A woman is a mystery to me. I mean, the story with her was, we actually went through the belly of the beast on casting that, because when we rebooted it, of course, first person I talked to was Josie Ho, and Josie is a dear friend to this day, but I think I don't think she wanted to do a picture she was going to be like just a martial arts fighting chick. She said to me, it's like a Michelle Yeoh role. And, she didn't feel that was her path. And then we had a lady named Selena Jade, who's very beautiful and talented. And she came on, and it was the same thing. It was a film that, in the role, it was inherent in the role that this was somebody who would be a credible fighting machine who could take on all these guys. And I think Selena's a lovely actress, and Josie's a wonderful actress. But everybody felt, as we moved forward, none of them really were ferocious enough. And so it so happened that I was training down on the Hong Kong docks with my teacher, Mak Ji Gong Sifu. And I'd met, as is my wont at that time, a hot model girl in a bar the night before. This was Phoenix Cho, Phoenix at Balin. And I think she was called Hannah at that time, but she was called Phoenix by the time she made the movie, Phoenix Cho. And I said, I'm training Kung Fu. She was in town making a movie, or trying to make a movie, for an Indian producer. And they were paying a lot of money. They were paying for her apartment. They were paying for her per diem and life. And they were going to make this movie. And I'd met this producer. He always had 3 assistants, one white girl, one Chinese girl, and one Indian girl. So it was like looking at like a human Neapolitan ice cream box. But so he was going to do this movie with her. And she came training with me for something to do. So we're training down the waterfront, and this fellow called up, and he said, hey, what are you doing? And she said, well, I'm doing Kung Fu with Bey down on the waterfront. And he said, well, that's nothing to do with what we're doing. And apparently he was put out by the fact that she was training Kung Fu with me and hanging out with me, and pretty much fired her from that other, as yet unmade, to this day, unmade film. So I felt guilty. And also I looked at her physicality and her beauty and her charisma and was like, she may be the one. So then we started training her and realized she indeed had fantastic potential. And we signed her to 3 films. First was Blood Bond, where I thought she, as you correctly say, absolutely blew up. I mean, there were some issues which I got into, not of her doing, on that first film. But I thought action-wise, she just absolutely was amazing. Some of the action was choreographed by Louis Fan and Ken Yip, and some of it was choreographed by Anthony Zito. And whoever was choreographing her, she could do stuff that today not many actresses can do.
No,
so we had a 3-film deal with her.
Like you watch Wonder Woman, or you watch. Right. I thought Halle Berry did pretty good in John Wick 3, but we just don't.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of that just has to do with keeping the actors and actresses.
I don't think I'm trying to remember. I don't think we ever. I'm trying to think if we had used. I'm sure we did, but very rarely used a double for Phoenix on that film. But then we had her come back. We had a 3-film deal with her, and we did Blood Bond. Second film was Beach Spike, which was a film about like a kung fu beach volleyball movie. She was in that as one of the bad girls, but she felt very distracted and not focused. A lot of things were issues. I don't know what was going on in her life. And then we had a 3rd film lined up, and she came back and said that her manager in LA was saying she needed to demand more money and this and that and the other, and she was now a big star and she needed more of whatever before she could do a 3rd film. And I was sorry for that, and so we kind of didn't work on the 3rd film. We never made the 3rd movie. But I thought, regardless, she'll cut together the footage from Blood Bond and Beach Spike and whatever else she's done and go in Hollywood, and we'll hear about her. She'd be like another Maggie Q or Selena Jade or, whoever's been a Eurasian or an Asian big star. Never heard from her again. I've never heard from her even, personally or professionally. And I met her ex-boyfriend who worked on the film with us. They started dating while we were doing Blood Bond. And I said, what happened? And he said, darkly, she had family issues. So whatever that means, I don't know. But I'm with you. Everybody asks me, I wish I had a dime for everybody who tracks down even clips from the movie or stills or, watches the film somehow and says, what happened to her? And it's a really good question. So I'm glad you liked her, and I'm sorry that she did not really fulfill on that early promise, because I thought she was, and I loved her as a person. I thought she was a great person and a good friend, and somebody to have around the kids, around the family. But I think that there were issues she was dealing with, of which I was perhaps not really aware, that distracted her.
Well, yeah. In fact, you ain't kidding. So it's the Blood Bond, and then the IMDb credits stop. Like it's over. And then you can't really find She's elusive. In fact, to some extent, Bey, I actually envy how elusive she is on the internet, because I feel like if you've done a movie or two, there's always like a plethora of things that you can find out.
Right. Well, is she not credited? She should be credited on there for Beach Spike, and if she isn't, I'll go back and fix it. Beach Spike is the last one. Yeah. Yeah, because she did those 2 for me, and then she was meant to do a 3rd film, which she declined to do. And then, well, not declined. She kind of wanted to renegotiate, and we didn't feel that was appropriate. And plus, to be honest with you, we'd had a challenging time on Beach Spike, so we parted company. But in my mind, I always hoped that she perhaps would go back to LA, deal with her family issues, deal with whatever was going on that we didn't know about, and maybe call up one day out of the blue and say, hey, you know what, I want to come and do this shit again, which would be great. I think she is on Facebook and stuff, but I don't know. I mean, it's very interesting, Sean. In this industry, you meet and work with people. I'll give you an example. Veronica Ngo, who is in Fury and Furies, who I first connected with, Jesus, I don't want to say how many years it's been now, but, 10 years, more than, like a long time ago, and made an instant connection, both as friends and as collaborators, and have worked happily together. Over the years, we released The Rebel, you may remember. Crouching Tiger, we did together. Fury, we just did Furies. And I worked together till the day I die. I mean, I just think but if you ask me, why did you form a connection with her, and it has lasted throughout the years, or whatever's gone on in our respective lives, that bond has been there, and why it's not the case with someone like Phoenix, I couldn't tell you. I don't know why, but this industry is very given to that you meet somebody, you have an intense working relationship. I'll give you an example of somebody I was close with on the Medallion was Claire Filani. who I thought did a good job for us, and we became very close as friends. But the moment the film was over, it was like you were deleted.